In this video, we're going to have a look at the second part of our sequence selection iteration sections. So, last video we had a look at sequence and we had a look at selection. This time we're going to have a look at iteration, which is focusing on for loops and while loops. So this is the last part of our programming fundamentals. So if you remember, we had a look at this pyramid and we've already done selection and we've already done sequence. So the last one we've got is iteration, and from there we'll then start to be able to take on naturally bigger programming challenges that are able to use all three. So by doing this section, it will unlock lots of different programming skills that we can all have a go at. So iteration is a posh word for repetition, and it allows you to repeat a block of code a set amount of times. There's two types of iteration that can occur: a for loop, which is count controlled, and a while loop, which is a condition controlled loop, and we'll talk about them in a little bit more detail as we get to them. One thing that I'm going to show that I used in the previous video but I haven't used in this example is the keyword that's called break. Now, break can be used to exit a loop early, and you might use selection to work out when is the right time to break out of that loop. So keep that in mind, and as always, as I would recommend, is as you're having a go with these examples, just have a go and see what happens. So we're going to have a start with our for loop, and this is what we call count controlled. So this is a count controlled loop, which means that they're best used if you know how many times you need your code to be repeated. So it could be used to repeat through a list, which we'll go over in a later video, or if you know how long a task needs to happen for a set amount of times. So for this very simple example, I'm just going to show you a for loop of counting to the number 10. You can then adapt the code to make it do as you wish. So again, using OCR exam reference language, you can see I've got for number equals 1 to 10. Print this is a number, and I add the number on. And you can see at the bottom, instead of having something like end for, it says next number. So this will print out the number. This will print out the lines. This is number 1. This is number 2. This is number 3. This is number 4. And so on until it prints out this is number 10. It is very important for me to tell you that the pseudocode is 1 to 10 inclusive. When you're doing your programming, not all languages have them inclusive. So for example, when I show you the Java example, it is not inclusive. So you need to think about how you are going to change that yourself. Okay, check with the language that you are using. Right, let's give this a demo and I'll show you how this works, because it is a little bit different to how it looks in that language. So here is my new file. You can see I've called it iteration, and we've got our main method, and now I'm going to show you how to do that for loop. So with a for loop, there's quite a little bit of setup that we need to do. The first thing that we do is we write the keyword for, and we put in our brackets. Now we almost need to give this for loop a little bit of information to be able to know what to do. So the first thing, I'm going to use the exact same example that we looked at. So I'm going to put int number, and I'm going to make it equal to 1. So this is me declaring like a counter that I am going to use. So I've said int number equals 1. Then we need to give the condition of how long we want our loop to go for. So I want to keep going until number is greater. While the number is less than or equal to 10. So it will allow me to count up. And then I'm going to say number plus plus, which just means number add on 1. We could also put it as plus equals 1, just like that. that is also a valid way of doing it. So you can see I've declared my counter, I've given my ending condition, and I've shown how much to increase number by. So for example, I can now put system.out.println, not enter, this is number, and then plus number. Let's have a look at how this works. So you can see there, this is number 1, this is number 2, this is number 3, this is number 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. We could make it count up in 2s. We could just change how this step works. And we can go from there. Now this should print all the odd numbers because it starts at 1. There we go, 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. If we start number at 2, it should then count up in 2s, starting with 2. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. There you go. Have a play around with that for loop. See what else you can do with it. But that is the very basics of a for loop. So we'll jump back and we'll have a look at a while loop now. While loops are condition controlled. This means we have to keep going to a Boolean expression. And this is usually helpful for when you don't know how many times you want your code to repeat. So you can see here we've got while the password is not equal to password exclamation mark 1, 2, 3. You should be able to recognize that example from our previous code or previous video. So you can see while the password is not equal to password exclamation mark 1, 2, 3, print access denied, and then ask for another attempt. So this code allows the password example from the last video, but gives the user multiple attempts to guess the answer. So that's one way of writing it. But the joys of a while loop is there's 2 ways. We've got this while loop, but we could also use a do while loop, which works a little bit like this. It's a little bit upside down. You can see that the while condition is at the end, so it checks it at the end after it's done the do section. Now, I'm going to show you how both of these work, and I know it's a little bit confusing, so let's have a look at how this works. So you can see we're going to go into this while example now, and you can see that I've already set up my file. I've commented out my for loop from before. I've put a scanner in and I've initialized it and called it password. So let's have a look at how this works. So we can say while, and in our brackets we put what our condition is. So we're going to say while password, and we're going to put equals 1, 2, 3, like that. Now you can see we're checking if the password is equal to this. Okay. So what we can do is we can put an exclamation mark in front of it to say not, so it means the opposite. And I probably should. Wait a minute, let me change some of this. See, we all make mistakes. User input equals scan, that's it. String password equals user input dot next line. And I'm sure you were all able to see my mistake before I'd even got there, so we're all human. So there we go. String password equals user input dot next line. So I could then put system.out.println access denied. System.out.println enter a password, and password equals user input dot next line. came from. Get rid of that. And just at the bottom, we will put a print statement saying access granted. I should also just put in a little message at the top, enter a password. There we go. So we've made a scanner, we've printed out enter a password. We then take input from the user and store it in password. And then we're saying while not, so that exclamation mark means not, password.equals password exclamation 1 2 3. So we're checking if it's not equal to that. System.out.println, access denied. System.out.println, enter a password. Password equals user input.next line. Let's have a look at this. So let's enter a password. So let's just try password. Access denied. Let's try again. So I could put in T-Lund Computing. Still wrong. I could try password exclamation mark 1 2 3. That's still wrong. So let's try with the capital letter. And you can see I've now got access granted. So that can keep going like that. Let's change some of this so then it works as a do while loop instead. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to comment out this line here. Comment out that loop there just so that we can keep going. And I'm also just going to comment that out. And that out. There we go. Right, so we can say do, and now we put in the bit that we want to do. System.out.println, enter a password, system.out.println, oh, sorry, string password equals user input dot next line, and here you can see it says as my error insert while expression to complete the do statement. So I can then say while password dot equals just like that, and we want to have that there. Password cannot be resolved. Oh, that's because I have initialized it in there. Let's just move that bit out. There we go, that should resolve my errors. If I can spell string correctly. There we go. Right, let's have another go. So you can see it should do the same thing, but everything has just been shuffled around slightly. So let's try entering a password, T-Lund Computing. It's not letting me in because it's asking me for another password. Password, still not right. Let's try that password that we've been using before. Access granted, and my program ends. So you can see that while loop still works, it's just structured a little bit differently. So let's have a go at the challenge. So your challenge for today is to still use the password example, but have a go at making a program that will allow a user to guess a password. They should have 3 attempts, so no more than 3 attempts. If they don't guess the password in 3 attempts, then an appropriate message should be displayed. If it is guessed, then it should say access granted. So have a go at coding that, and I will see you in the next video.